Alrighty, what's up guys? Matt here from Loon Outdoors, and today we are tying just a little steelhead fly. It's kind of a late fall, early winter pattern for me. Maybe fish it throughout all of the fall, heck, even the summer, I don't care. More of a low water style. We haven't got any big rains yet, so it's looking a little grim out there. A little low water, but so in the vise I have a size 4. This is an Ahrex Nordic Salt 156. I also use the Firehole Stick 718 for this, and I have a 4 mil tungsten bead on there. My thread today, as always, is going to be Vivus 50. It's kind of like my staple and what I always tie with. So I'm going to start by taking some turns down to the back right at the hook point. Next up, I like to add a little bit of a hot spot, something for the fish to look at. So I'm going to use a little bit of a Glow Bright floss. This is shade number 4. It looks like a super triple electric hot orange to me. So I'm going to peel off about 2 feet of that, secure it back in there. You could have this dialed in another bobbin. I'm just not that sophisticated. So what I like to do is I double it and then double it again. And I'm going to bring my thread back up here. You can tell I'm not putting a lot of weight on there. If you wanted to add weight to the shank of the hook, you could. You could take something like some lead-free 0.25 and wrap forward. So what I'm going to do here is just kind of create a bigger floss out of this small floss. And this is just like kind of the underbody. Fish aren't going to see it completely. But gets the job done. And if it's not perfect, don't stress out. We're not wearing white gloves. We're not tying 100% original Atlantic salmon stuff here where you're touching turns with really expensive flosses and stuff like that. So I do a few wraps to secure it with it forward and back. And I'm going to go ahead here and put in a small whip finish, just like a placeholder. Next up, this is a bottle of Flow, and I'm just going to hit this with Flow. You could also hit it with fluorescing as well. That would be super awesome. Kind of go both ways. Whichever one I grab is what I use. Plasma light it. And we're going to take a nice little pause right here. So now that we have this guy kind of locked in there, one thing I notice about a lot of our trout streams, a lot of our steelhead streams, is they have a bunch of crawdads in them. And I just cut a quick V on the back of this, and I'm going to measure this guy up. And I don't want this fly to be too big. I want it to be a nice little size fly there. So I just separate the hide by hand. You could also use scissors if you were so inclined. And I'm going to make sure I don't compress too much of the hair there and just work my way forward, securing this in place. So one of my big tricks is right now what I'll actually come and do is this hair is really receptive to receiving UV resin. So we already have one coat on there kind of as a bonding agent, and I'm going to go ahead and saturate that hot spot to the fly. You can see it soaking in there, creating a nice bond, and once I let it go, now the fallibility of this fly will be significantly reduced, and it's a really good bond. It's not just going to come undone on you right quick. So next up, one thing I notice is crawdads have a lot of blue in them, and they go through molting cycles just like mayflies and a ton of other invertebrates. They molt. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring some blue, like cool kingfisher blue looking rubber legs in, and I kind of call this fly the curb feeler just because I think of like those old man rides with curb feelers. So we're going to end up cutting them there, but just to keep everything out of the way, I'm going to use a vise pawn and just pin them back nicely out of the way. So my next little palmer job that I'll do is, this is a UV2 Spirit River Grizzly Soft Tackle in orange. So it's cool, it's mottled, comes in a bag like so, and you're going to get a bunch of really cool looking feathers in here. What I like to do is just find a nice kind of transitional one that gets real nice and bushy. And I'm just going to tie it in by the tip. Then I'll grab the tip as well, fold it back over, and with this fly, it's not going to show up, so I'm not going to worry about trimming that off. It's just going to be part of this like kind of prop collar that I'm building here. And I'm actually going to palmer this in using the nicer part of the soft tackle feather up front there, but getting into a little bit of this marabou as well. And you can tie this fly in purples and pinks and browns and oranges and blacks and any other mega number of colors, and it's going to fish super well. You can change the bead color. It just really, the sky's the limit. It's just an overly fancy bead head leech pattern. And if you're going to have one fly for steelhead fishing, I think like a leech pattern might be like this, like gold standard or a staple that you should have in there. I'm going to use a little bit of our ostrich herl, and you're just going to find some with some seemingly decent tips on there, about 4 to 5 strands. And what I'm going to do is just simply make sure there's no weird little shorties in there. Try to even them out the best I can. Just take my time here. And I've really found that late summer run to early fall run fish really enjoy organic, more earthy colors and tones and stuff like that. So I fish this here in Northern California with great confidence. I imagine you could probably catch a multitude of species on this, other than steelhead too. I'm sure bass would eat it as well. So next up, it's going to be pretty simple. This is like a kind of this motory oil looking pumpkin flake colored rubber leg that I like to use, and all I'm going to do is pull them up and tie them in. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and separate them out so that they're sitting right where they should be. I tie them in super good. The silicone tends to last a pretty good amount of time, has great longevity in the water, and a ton of really cool movement. So next up, I just put a little bit of a dubbing spacer in here, and shoot, well, we'll make it work. And typically I do this in a dubbing loop, but I've seemingly kicked my dubbing spinner off into the distance. But that's all right, we can work through it. So we'll just spin this up here. Be mindful of your other feather. Be nice if they'd all stay back there. So we'll just do a few wraps with this little dubbing loop that we've created. Nice little dark spot kind of up at the front here. And it's very beneficial to have your dubbing loop tool, but we'll just work around it. There's a reason we invent these tools. Perfect. And from there, we are going to tease this out just a bit So I just want this to be a little bit more. And then I'm going to use just a real nice dyed brown pheasant rump section here. That one had a weak stem. It's never good. And if you don't have real big, beefy pheasant feathers, or you've tied through all of like what you're going to think of like as your A category feathers, just double up some Bs, like your second out kind of guys, you know? These ones don't have to be your super killer long flowing, you know, spay hackly pheasant feathers that you're using as substitutes or anything like that. They can just be your shorter run-of-the-mill guys. And all I do here is I'll just double them up and separate, holding the tips. And I'll keep that tip and tie it back in. And again, I'm just going to leave it. This isn't hopefully getting judged by you know, anybody in any sort of salmon fly guild or anything like that. So I'm not too stressed out over all of the fit and finish on there. I'll take a few wraps, come back in, and we're going to whip finish, and we'll do our last little leg trim here. And we'll go out and feel some boulders with this guy, aka the curb feeler. So I will release my legs. And for these back legs, I want them to be about an inch shorter than my tail. So we make sure we get all of our good stuff out of there. And then trim them out, put them in there. And the front ones, I'm just going to trim the little tips that hold it together off by about ½ inch. Just leave it really nice and sparse. And this is going to have all of the good kind of colors and activity that you want out of a steelhead fly. It's going to be fairly light to cast. It'll sink pretty well. This is something that you can throw on like a rage head on like a 6-weight spay or even a 5-weight spay all day long, and it's sure to catch some fish, tied in a ton of different colors. And thank you for watching. Catch you next time.